Welcome back to Ben's Book Club. Today we are diving into the book The Lexus and the Olive Tree. Back in 1999, the Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist Thomas Friedman wrote what essentially became the ultimate survival guide to the post-Cold War world. He presented this bold, really fascinating thesis that old global system, the one defined by superpowers, concrete walls, and missiles, that was completely gone. In its place, a totally new, hyper-fast, and deeply interconnected international system had taken over, a system we now just call globalization. It's an incredibly powerful framework for understanding world events, and in this explainer, we're going to visually map out his ideas and see exactly how they hold up today. Here is our roadmap for today. First, the core metaphor. Second, the globalization system. Third, the Golden Straitjacket. Fourth, the olive tree backlash. And finally, we'll put his 1999 predictions to the test against today's reality. Let's get right into it.
Okay, let's dive into this. Section 1, the core metaphor, two fundamental human drives.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how Friedman frames our modern era. He argues it is fundamentally defined by this inescapable conflict, basically a massive, high-stakes tug of war. On one hand, you have the Lexus. This represents that relentless human drive for modernization, efficiency, prosperity, and global integration. It's the desire to build the absolute best high-tech luxury car and compete fiercely in a totally borderless market. But then, on the other hand, you have the olive tree. And this represents everything that anchors us to the earth: our identity, our roots, tradition, religion, community, and our deep sense of belonging. Friedman's overarching point here is that the modern world is a constant balancing act. If you have too much Lexus, well, you risk losing your soul and your community. But if you cling entirely to the olive tree, you risk economic starvation and just getting left behind.
Moving on to Section 2, the globalization system, the new international order.
So, Friedman doesn't just see globalization as some passing trend, he views it as a permanent new operating system for the world. It completely replaced the old Cold War dynamics. And how did everyone get plugged into it? Through three simultaneous revolutions. Step 1 was the democratization of technology. Think about it. Powerful computing tools that used to strictly belong to governments were suddenly just sitting on our desks. Step 2 was the democratization of finance, meaning capital could suddenly flow freely across borders with the literal click of a mouse. And Step 3 was the democratization of information. Suddenly, almost anyone could access knowledge instantly via the internet. Brought together, these three forces drastically lowered the barriers to entry, allowing practically anyone, anywhere, to jump straight into the global market. But, as you can probably guess, this fully interconnected, democratized system carries some pretty unique vulnerabilities. Friedman outlines the emergence of what he actually calls super-empowered angry men. Because technology, finance, and information are now so incredibly accessible, individuals are handed this unprecedented level of power. This means extremists, terrorists, or, modern cyber hackers can leverage the exact same tools of globalization, the networks, the connectivity of the system itself, to organize and strike back against that very global order. It's definitely a sobering reality of living in a fully connected world. Section 3, the Golden Straitjacket, choosing prosperity.
If a nation decides it wants in, if it wants to choose prosperity, attract foreign capital, and actually thrive in this new operating system, it has to adapt to a very specific set of economic rules. We're talking implementing free markets, committing to open trade, privatizing state-owned industries, aggressively deregulating the economy, and strictly balancing the budgets. It is a rigid, highly disciplined economic playbook. You want to plug into the global wealth machine? You have to wear the straitjacket.
So the crucial point is that this golden straitjacket is completely one-size-fits-all. When a country decides to put this garment on, yes, its economy will generally grow and wealth will increase. But the massive trade-off? Its political choices severely shrink. Your political torso literally gets squeezed tight. It essentially means that regardless of whether a left-wing or right-wing government gets elected, the fundamental economic policies have to remain almost exactly the same just to keep the global system happy. And who exactly is enforcing the rules of this straitjacket? Well, enter the electronic herd. This is Friedman's term for the massive, anonymous, and unbelievably fast-moving crowd of global stock, bond, and currency traders. Armed with just laptops and real-time data, they are the new hidden hand moving the global market. They can instantly funnel billions of dollars into a country that plays by the rules, or they can stampede out in seconds, utterly crushing a nation's currency overnight if they even sense bad economic policy.
They are, without a doubt, the ultimate enforcers of global integration. Through this lens of global integration, Friedman was actually quite optimistic about the future of international peace. He famously proposed this idea, sometimes called the Golden Arches theory. It simply states, no two countries that both had McDonald's had fought a war against each other since each got its McDonald's. The theory basically suggested that once nations are so deeply integrated into the global economy, the cost of going to war just becomes way too devastating to their own prosperity.
However, history certainly provided some direct challenges to that optimism. The 2008 Russia-Georgia War stands as a famous historical refutation of the McDonald's theory. Both of these nations had McDonald's within their borders, they'd integrated economies, and yet severe military conflict still occurred. It serves as a very clear data point demonstrating the real limits of economic integration when it comes to actually preventing geopolitical conflict. All right, Section 4, the olive tree backlash, globalization's discontents. Because let's be real, globalization is not a frictionless machine. It generates massive, inevitable, and often very messy resistance. When we look at the human scale of this new system, we see a stark divide. On the one hand, you have the clear economic winners, the tech entrepreneurs, the multinational investors, the folks who have the skills to thrive in a frictionless, borderless world. But on the other hand, you have the very real losers of the system, displaced factory workers whose jobs were outsourced, or local farmers who just can't compete with massive global supply chains. This really highlights the profound job displacement, the widening inequality, and the painful environmental and social trade-offs that happen when the Lexus races ahead. And when people feel like their livelihoods and their communities are threatened, it leads to tangible political consequences. The olive tree pushback manifests through several powerful forces. We're talking the rise of aggressive nationalism, a surge in deep identity politics, waves of religious fundamentalism, and even coordinated deglobalization movements. These are all real examples of populations reacting to the system, essentially deciding, hey, we are willing to sacrifice some level of global prosperity if it means protecting our identity, our borders, and our roots. Finally, Section 5, 1999 predictions versus today. How did it age? And this brilliantly illustrates how much the landscape has actually shifted. See, Friedman formulated this framework during the highly optimistic dot-com euphoria of the late 90s. Regarding connectivity, the 1999 view was wildly optimistic. The idea was that the internet would inherently bring humanity together. The reality today, we're seeing algorithmic echo chambers that often weaponize our divisions. Look at the symbol of the Lexus. Back then, it was all about physical, high-end manufacturing. Today, the race for prosperity is completely dominated by AI, microchips, and green energy infrastructure. And finally, the olive tree. In 1999, it was primarily seen in localized ethnic and religious conflicts. But today, it is scaled way up into aggressive, state-level nationalism and major deglobalization policies. The core tension that Friedman identified remains incredibly accurate, but the actual battleground has totally transformed. So, after laying all of this out, I want to leave you with a direct question to reflect on. Where do you feel the Lexus and olive tree tension in your own life? Are you constantly leaning toward the fast-paced efficiency of the global system, or do you find yourself actively seeking out the deep, protective roots of your local community? It truly is the defining balancing act of our time. Thank you so much for exploring this fascinating topic with me today, and please subscribe so you don't miss an episode.